All righty, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the joint meeting of the Cotati City Council and the successor agency to the former Cotati Community Redevelopment Agency for this February 24th, 2026. And the mayor is under the weather, so it's just us three tonight. So with that, Kevin, could we have a roll call?
Councilmember Savage.
Here.
Councilmember Ford.
Here.
Vice Mayor Harvey.
Here.
We'll show Mayor Lemus and Councilmember Sparks is absent. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. So the next item we have is approval of the minutes and notice of waiving of reading of all resolutions and ordinances introduced and or adopted under this agenda item. And we have 1 minute for the regular meeting of February 10th. Are there any questions or changes to those minutes? Okay, seeing none. Anyone wishing to have public comment? Sorry about that. Seeing no one jump up. And Kevin, could you check with our Zoom attendees?
Yes, thank you, Vice Mayor Harvey. Speaking to our Zoom attendees, if you'd like to make a public comment on this item, please use the raise hand icon. We do have a hand from Lori. You have the floor.
Ben Gordon mentioned last time that it should not say absent, but leave for Laura Sparks, so I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Kevin, do you have that?
There are no further hands.
Okay, thank you for that. And do you have that comment?
I believe she is listed as leave of absence under the attendees. I think what the commenter is referring to is perhaps in the vote boxes it lists as absent, but in the attendance it says leave of absence.
I see that. Okay. All right. Thank you for that.
Move to approve. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
That passes 3-0 with 2 absent. So onward, we will move on to the next, which is presentations. And first up, we have the Cotati Historical Society presentation. And I'm assuming that these gentlemen, Mr. DeLasso and Mr. Gilardi, are going to provide that presentation for us. I just assumed that.
You're assuming correctly. Thank you. Thank you for inviting us to make a brief presentation tonight. The Cotati Historical Society has been around since 2007, and we are here to preserve this incredible history that we have in our small town through acquisition and preservation of historical materials, and to support our community through exhibits, educational outreach, and historical research. We're a nonprofit organization run entirely by volunteers, and I've put together a list of just about 6 or 7 items in bullet fashion that we're going to do a little tag team on and tell you kind of what's up with us. I'm sorry, we didn't introduce ourselves either. So, John DeLasso, the president of the Historical Society, Ed Gilardi, the vice president.
The first thing is that to make sure you're all invited to our annual barbecue, which is going to be on April 19th. It's a fantastic event. We have approximately 60 community volunteers that help us put this on, and all the proceeds go towards funding the museum. And what we're adding this year is Bryce is going to actually do farm tours during the day also. Because we want to make sure that as much of the community gets to experience the farm and see, what's going on and learn about the future plans.
One thing I believe that you have copies of, and there's copies in the back as well, is our quarterly newsletter that we put out. And that's something we send off to all of our members, as well as just available when we go and do public events. We will again be doing our free walking tours of the downtown, historic walking tours. It's going to be on the 2nd Saturday, starting in April and going through October, provided weather holds out, people show up, all that kind of good stuff. We're doing something completely new. The city of Rohnert Park, or excuse me, folks from Rohnert Park, not the city itself, have asked us, they want to do a joint history day with, they really love the museum that we have here, and they always see us at events, and I have to say, they're a little jealous, but it's okay. It's okay. So with that, it's scheduled for July 25th, and I believe it's going to be in the library? Yeah. So stay tuned for more information.
And this last fall, we had a community event focusing on the Veranda Fletty Ranch, and we had good turnout, and we had some really good feedback from the community. We really appreciate the city involving us in the plans and the design from the beginning, and we look forward to the day that we can join the city in doing fundraising to make this a reality.
And just two last items. One is we were thanking this and are thanking the city for, they had requested some names for possible new streets in the city. And they did come to us, and I'm sure they reached out to a bunch of other sources as well. And we decided to put together a list of some historic figures in Cotati that don't currently have street names after them. So we did submit that to the city. And finally, this year, as you know, is the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. So we're going to be doing a special display in the museum. Our first meeting to try to figure out what we're going to do is this coming Friday. And Ed was very lucky. He found a flag, a U.S. flag, original flag, with 42
flags.
42 stars, as opposed to the 50 that we currently have. So it's a very old flag, and this gentleman got it from an uncle of his who fought in the war, and how he got a hold of the flag. We're trying to figure out that story, but that's going to be kind of the centerpiece that we'll have in the museum along with other items. So that's it. We just wanted to give the council and the citizens a brief update on what's been going on.
Thank you for that update. Any questions from the council?
I was at a meeting this last week with some of the civic leaders from Rohnert Park, and they are indeed a little jealous and very envious, and you guys are setting a great standard in the community, so thank you very, very much.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. I was at a different meeting, and they were telling me about that, so I'm glad that you mentioned it, because I was going to ask you about it. But they are very excited, and yes, they seemed very jealous, so thank you for that. And it looks like we have a hand up, so I will open public comment.
Yes, thank you, Vice Mayor Harvey. We do have a hand from Lori. You have the floor.
With the ones with the street names, I was contacted, and I have previously asked for a street to be named after Gene Bennett. He was a man that lived in Cotati, had 8 children, he had a disease that took all of his, he was allergic to the sun, all this kind of stuff, and he could fly an airplane, and he could, he raised his 8 children wonderfully, and I never heard anything, so I would really like to be in on this discussion of street names, because I have requested over the couple times for this man to be put on the list. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, it looks like we have someone in the audience. Mr. Barrich, do you have a question? Well, it's going to get a little crowded up here, but just in case you have a question for them, I'll bring them back up. But yeah.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. I want to thank the gentleman for making that nice report. One thing that we might want to take into consideration for naming any additional new streets are those people in our community who have been so unselfishly giving themselves to this town, coming forward, participating in civic affairs, coming to the workshops, sending emails, really rolling up their sleeves, pushing their dinner plates away to be a part of this very important representative democracy. A lot of these people are often forgotten. And they have made stellar contributions. Sometimes, unfortunately, they've had to even sue the city to get them to do the right thing. And at the end of the day, it's usually a very good thing. There's some cleansing that goes on. There's some self-evaluation that comes from the people who are civic activists and really contribute at expense to themselves, expense to their families, expense to their reputations, their home businesses, and so forth. So please take that into consideration. Also, I want to bring to your attention, I want to take a little walk down memory lane. When the Historical Society was first established, the former town historian Prue Draper came forward in her presentation for the Historical Society, and she asked the City Council if they'd be so kind as if they would allow the Historical Society to move into that vacant room across the hallway temporarily to set up the Historical Society. And citizens got up and asked, pertinent questions about, free rent, free heat, free this, free that. How long is this going to go on as temporary? And she assured us it was going to be temporary. And her wish was that eventually the Historical Society would move across the street to the Fleddy farmhouse. Now, that was a long time ago, but that was her thought before Fleddy Ranch was developed. She came forward years later in the 2010 or 11, and she got up and thanked the council that she was still able to have the temporary room over here, but still thought it was not going to be the permanent location for the Historical Society. A few of us agreed. And she did say that when I asked her about this comment about temporary, she commented back, what does temporary really mean? And it got me to thinking, was I hoodwinked by this nice old lady? Was she being disingenuous? We'll never know. May she rest in peace. But the fact is, that was the plan all along. It was not to occupy that room, and it was supposed to move across the street. And history needs to be told. The Historical Society, its story, needs to be truthfully told. And that lady came here with heartfelt intentions of that location being a temporary location. Now we're into this almost 20 years. How temporary is that? It sounds like a bunch of double talk to me. And I don't want to tarnish the good work that the Historical Society has done in any way. But this has never set well with me, the fact that I think we were taken for a ride on that temporary designation.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else wishing to speak? Not seeing anyone else move forward. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for the presentation. Look forward to, they've already tapped me to volunteer at the barbecue, so look forward to that. I always enjoy seeing people when they're happy out eating and things, so it's always wonderful to serve people. So again, thank you for your presentation and thank you for the work that you do. So with that, we will move on to the next item, and that is the agenda review. Are there any changes to the agenda?
No proposed changes, Mayor.
Okay, then we will move on. The next item is citizens' business and public comment for consent calendar items. Any member of the public wishing to speak to the council on any items listed on the consent calendar or any matters not listed on the agenda that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council may do so at this time. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the council is not allowed to consider issues or take action on any items not listed on the agenda. Pursuant to City Council Policy 2025-03, comments of any member of the public are normally restricted to a total of 3 minutes in length per person for matters not on the agenda and a total of 3 minutes per person in length for any and all items on the consent calendar. The mayor may extend the time limit for a reasonable time or a disability accommodation has been requested. To facilitate public comment, the timer indicator lights will display yellow when there are 30 seconds remaining and red when the time has expired. So with that, I will start here in the room. Mr. Barrett, please come forward.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I would like to point out you referred to me as Mr. Barrich on my speaker card for the 100th time. I have put on Council Member Barrich. I'm due that respect. That's proper etiquette to call somebody as they wish to be called. I don't know why I'm disrespected in this manner for so long. I don't know if it's my skin color. I don't know if it's my gender. I can't figure it out where this resentment is coming from. I served the city with honor and distinction. I voted against the downtown specific stupid plan. Okay? I mean, I've done my due diligence, and I can't get the respect that I'm deserved. Now, normally we start these meetings like most other cities in the country with the pledge. I'd like to ask people to stand if I can give the pledge tonight. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Over 2 years ago, Robert Smith, your code enforcement chief, told my attorney that if I did not attend these kangaroo court hearings here in these chambers, that I was going to be fined a lot of money for bogus code violations if I did not show up. So I attended the kangaroo court and the subsequent hearings afterwards. They didn't offer me an attorney to help me with these misdemeanor charges. I was due an opportunity for a state-appointed attorney. I was not given one. I did not waive my rights to a fair and speedy trial. These are misdemeanor charges. I never waived my rights. My constitutional rights were violated. The judge in this case was handpicked by the city, not drawn out of a hat as is proper in cases like this. Handpicked. Was he volunteering for the city? Was he getting paid? Nobody knew. He wouldn't say. He wouldn't say. The city never gave me a fine amount until very recently because they knew there were no violations on my property. They wanted the administration fees that they could add up month after month after month. That's how we'll get Mr. Barrich. Not from fines, not from the facts, but by the process. There was no contract with Judge Wiener that we could ever find through public records requests, but it wasn't my concern. I was interested to see how far fraudulent this city would go. Almost 3 years later, and no convictions. 3 years, Mr. Savage, 3 years. It's been an obvious extortion racket. I have the right to personally place you all under citizen's arrest, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to steal the glory from our police chief, our wonderful, handsome police chief. He's going to get that opportunity soon enough. And how dare the city staff order me to turn off my body camera in a public, informal hearing at City Hall? It's not even imaginable. Turn off my body camera. Put it away, Mr. Barrich. And continue that I order that I turn off my camera every step of the way through case management hearings. So much for Mr. Smith's code enforcement promise that he would make money for the city in just a few years. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Chiramello?
Vice Mayor Harvey, you and the council are not here to serve your city staff, but to provide oversight over them despite my observations to the contrary. I would suggest you and your council direct your staff to comply with the law. I've been following a code enforcement case in your city, which is of great interest to me as an independent investigative journalist. Your city and you, by your elected or appointed positions as council people, are all responsible for the actions and inactions of your staff. According to testimony during a hearing, your part-time code enforcement officer, Robert Smith, has stated he is employed by this city for 4 hours per week. This means he is your employee, Mr. Obid's employee, and a city employee. This means you are all responsible for public records requests. I was here 2 weeks ago to get a copy of the original contract between Mr. Smith and the administrative hearing officer, Gary Viner. I spoke with your city clerk, Kevin Patterson, who told me it was not in his possession. Mr. Patterson directed me to ask Noah House, your Community Development Director and Code Enforcement Department representative, for this document. Mr. House likewise said he did not have a copy of it. Mr. Smith has failed to respond because I emailed him directly. Perhaps any of you can explain to me how your staff can operate on such an undocumented basis. How is it possible for a hearing officer to be employed by your code enforcement officer without a contract for over 2.5 years? How is it possible for the code enforcement officer to pay the AHO and then demand reimbursement from the city without a contract? I've attempted to speak with your finance director, Angela Corder, for over a month now to ascertain the finance procedure when hiring and paying an AHO. She has my contact information. She has seen me at these council meetings. She has made no attempt to explain anything, even with CPRA requests in place. She is also conveniently in meetings prior to council meetings and never seems to come out of them during your normal business hours. According to the CPRA, Government Code 7920 through 7931, Division 10, titled Access to Public Records, under 7922.535, A, each agency upon a request for copy of records shall within 10 days from the receipt of the request determine whether the request in whole or in part seeks copies of disclosable public records. Before your city attorney erroneously claims you have 10 days to give me the contract, and those 10 days have already been exceeded, let me quote another section, 7922.525. A, public records are open to inspection at all times during the office hours of a state or local agency, and every person has a right to inspect any public record. Mr. House was quite upset when I informed him of this. He couldn't believe it. He had to stop his work on other issues to address the CPRA during business hours. I explained it was his choice when to respond, but it had to be done during normal business hours. Plain English and law. It would appear to any reasonable person your city staff is attempting to hide their actions from the public. I would hate to have to hire an attorney whose fees your city will have to pay to obtain this information. At this time, I am informing you as the governing body of the City of Cotati, I am demanding, not requesting, the original contact between Gary Viner and Robert Smith, which contract hired Viner as the AHO and is a public record to which I am entitled. I want to change subjects. Bruce Hyman, Arthur Gauss, David H. Schwartz, Sean M. Crow, Kelly M. Murphy, Joe Rose. Who are these people? They're all ADA attorneys. The Americans with Disability Act has been in place since the law, signed into law in 1990 by George H.W. Bush. The city of Cotati's time has run out long ago. Despite your staff's statement that they're getting quotes, the public is not going to give you a half a year to get the job done. I'll be giving Ms. Alderman the contact information for all, not only these ADA attorneys, but a link to all in the San Francisco area who practice this type of law. Be forewarned.
Thank you very much for your comments. Anyone else? Seeing no one else, we'll go to Zoom, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Harvey. We do have one hand. Once again, Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon if you'd like to make a public comment. The first hand is from Lori. You have the floor.
The reason I am not there and on Zoom today because you have once again made it unsafe for me to get into the building. It's been a month since Craig Scott went out with me and saw the problems. I also have a cracked heel and everything, so I can't get out of my wheelchair like I did 2 weeks ago. So I am being basically barred from your city, from attending the city council meeting because I can't get out of my wheelchair. And he gave me in, wrote me last night. He's never hardly ever wrote me in my 10 years I've been doing this, and said that he got quotes. He didn't ask me what was wrong. He got quotes without to fix it, and there's nothing. I haven't received him. I asked for him. He doesn't know what's wrong. He doesn't know it's the door. It's not the door width. It's the weight of the door and things like that. This is horrible. The ADA has been in effect for almost 35 years, I think. It's ridiculous. It's another example of how you invite
Thank you for your comments.
Vice Mayor Harvey, there are no further hands on Zoom. That will end public comment.
Okay, thank you for that. Then we've taken public comment on citizens' business and consent calendar, so we will move on to the consent calendar. Oh, and there is no consent items. Boy, that's unusual, but okay. And then direction on future agenda items. Nope, not seeing any. Okay. Then we will move on to the regular agenda. The first item is consider submission of a letter of interest to join the Renewal Enterprise District Joint Powers Authority. I'm assuming, Damien, you're going to take this?
Yes, thank you, Vice Mayor, members of the council. So just to provide some orientation, the Renewal Enterprise District, it's often termed or referred to as the RED. They are a joint powers authority that were created in 2018 by the city of Santa Rosa and Sonoma County. And the intent was to accelerate the development of infill, transit-oriented, and climate-resilient housing. So post-fires, basically, right? It's one of the impetuses to get it going. In parallel with the JPA, the RED Housing Fund was also created, primarily with seed funding from a portion of the PG&E wildfire settlement that Santa Rosa and the County of Sonoma both received. So they both put in $10 million each from their proceeds from that settlement. And the RED Housing Fund is structured as a 501c3 public charity. And that was also launched like in tandem, so 2018 as well. And the RED Housing Fund has its own board of directors, and it was created to provide low-cost, gap-filling capital to developers aimed at accelerating infill development. So basically, the funding arm of the JPA. So here locally, the city adopted in our Housing Element Program 1-7, which directed staff to explore housing bond financing. And the affordable housing projects, as you all know, affordable housing projects take many years to develop due to the complex financing stack that's often necessary, which can include needing to be successful in competitive grant cycles from various public agencies over multiple years, and also potentially grants, other grants, and financing. So for all those reasons, it can be very, very cumbersome and time-consuming to put together a full construction financing stack for an affordable housing project. And in Housing Element Program 1-7, the intent was to explore options for lowering the project financing costs through the issuance of tax-exempt bonds. So in other words, using public ownership through a JPA, potentially to issue tax-exempt bonds. And the potential benefit for that would be that the project would have access to tax-exempt bonds, which have lower interest rates than normal just bonds or financing that a project would get on the market rate financing. The other benefit is that because it would be publicly owned, it would be property tax exempt, so that also lowers the operating costs. So those things are some elements that made that a potentially interesting option to look into as we move forward in the housing element. The same methodology could also be applied to existing multifamily housing developments, but the initial focus in the housing element was on new construction, primarily due to the significant amount of undeveloped or underdeveloped property in our city's priority development areas. Statewide, there are several options for JPAs that can perform this function, such as the CSCDA, and the city of Cotati is a member of that. So the trade-off there is that we have no governance or program design input. So in that case, you just kind of order off the menu, basically, of what they have programmatically. And the programs themselves, in like the CSCDA example, the programs themselves are actually funded as sort of like an administrative cost as part of the debt issuances. So they do regular, usually once or a couple times a year debt services, or debt issuances, sorry. And then that, the incremental administrative cost of that is what funds sort of the ongoing operations. So there's no out-of-pocket expenses for ongoing costs for members. Locally, the city of Santa Rosa and the county of Sonoma, as I mentioned, formed this RED JPA. And the RED JPA is governed by a board of directors consisting of 2 directors from Santa Rosa and 2 directors from the County of Sonoma. The current members for Santa Rosa are Santa Rosa Council members Fleming and Hermosillo, and the county board members are Corsi and Benuelos. And the executive director is Robin Stefani. She's an independent contractor. And the treasurer is the Sonoma County Treasurer Auditor. And the board, the Red Board, typically meets on the first Wednesday of the month, every other month, so effectively 6 times a year. The primary function of the Red Board has been to develop and approve the Red Project criteria, which is one of the attachments to the staff report, as well as develop legislative principles, which is also attached. And the Red Board members do serve as non-voting advisory board members on the Red Housing Fund Board of Directors. The documents, the Red Project criteria and the legislative principles serve as advising documents for the investment of the Red Housing Fund. And it's staff's understanding also that the Red Board of Directors also nominates some of the Red Housing Fund directors. So there's a lot of close connection between the two, but they are separate, legally separate entities. The Red Housing Fund was used, just kind of, again, local example, the Red Housing Fund was used in part to finance the South Park Commons project, which is the project in southeast Santa Rosa, right by Highway 12 and I guess it's Mendocino Avenue at that point, where it crosses under Highway 12. It's right, it's a recently completed project. It was developed by Freebird Development Company with a low interest loan. So that's one of the ways that they get involved in these projects is they can issue low interest loans, either for construction phase or potentially permanent financing. It depends on what's needed for a particular project. And as you can see in the tables that are also in the staff report and the most recent financial statements posted from the Red Housing Fund, most of the original $20 million in loaned funds are committed to various affordable and market rate projects, but there is $7 million coming due in 2027. So it's a bit, even though they're technically the $10 million and $10 million by the county and the city of Santa Rosa were provided as loans. As far as I can tell, there doesn't seem to be a call date on those loans. They seem to be sort of revolving loans but they're calling them loans at this point in time. Any new members to the Red JPA may, I can't obviously make any commitments at this point, but could potentially have access to that, presuming that the 2 founding members are amenable to that. But that's part of this proposed exploration process. So areas eligible for RED programs would typically be restricted to the higher density development areas, so your PDA areas, and also the transit-oriented development infill area. And aside from the potential interest to assist with the 120 East Cotati Avenue Affordable Housing Project, the Red Board did establish 27 priorities that could benefit the city and potentially the region, including revising the RED project criteria to align with the Plan Bay Area 2050 to facilitate funding awards. And I know we've been recently talking about the TOC policies, and that's all intended to, a lot of that work has all been intended to align us with the Plan Bay Area 2050 and the goals and priorities in that planning document. They also have a priority to add new members to the JPA. They want to, after the initial 2 years, when it was just a Santa Rosa County thing, they've been looking to try to expand it into a more regional thing so that we can work together collaboratively on these kind of projects. And then as an advocacy body, advocating as a group can be more effective than advocating each individually. So, and then also, I would say also pursuing emerging funding strategies such as the bonding and some other things I've been talking about that that can work better as a larger group rather than just the 2 of them that are currently in the JPA. And then finally capital raising for JPA members and grants aimed at implementing some of these emerging funding strategies that are discussed. So as detailed in the staff report, there are some initial staff concerns about the annual cost to join the RED JPA, as well as questions around funding allocation and concerns about some of the voting thresholds and the bylaws. So it would be important that if we enter into an exploration discussion with them, that we reach agreement on these before any recommendation would come back to the City Council. But informally, city staff have been in conversation with Red JPA staff to express these expected obstacles to joining, and the Red JPA staff have been very receptive to potential changes to address these concerns, as they're looking to regionalize the JPA for the overall benefit of the communities in Sonoma County. Another potential option discussed was joining as an advisory, a non-voting member of the Red Board as a type of low commitment trial period to understand how it all works, potential benefits, time commitments, and so forth. That's another potential option, assuming we're still in the conversation on the bylaws or the JPA provisions. If the Red JPA moves forward with an advisory member role, so they haven't added that yet in their bylaws, but they're talking about adding it here very shortly. The City Council, assuming we move forward in this action tonight, the City Council may also be asked to appoint a member to this role. And if the City Council ultimately adopts a resolution and signs on to the Red JPA, there would be a need to appoint a City Council member and an alternate to the regional body, so it would be a new regular appointment. And regardless, staff view this as a potentially good local option for regional collaboration and an opportunity for innovation and joint development of new funding sources for infill housing in particular. And it doesn't foreclose the city's ability to leverage other funding sources such as the like the CSCDA I mentioned earlier, so those will still obviously be open to us. And I think that pretty much sums it up, but the actions asked, the recommendations for the actions tonight are authorizing the mayor to send a letter expressing interest to join the Red JPA, and there's a draft in the packet of what that letter could look like. Authorize the mayor to express the same before the Red Board of Directors, because if we do send the letter, then the first thing that we'd be asking for is to be agendized on the Red Board agenda to basically say, hey, we want to join. But we need to start the exploration process and discussions. And then finally, authorizing me to take any necessary steps to fully evaluate the Red membership and make recommendations to the City Council at a future date that would be determined. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions if the council has any.
Thank you for that. Yes.
So most of my questions are probably more appropriate after you've done the explorations. But would this primarily be handled out of your office or out of community development? Do you know?
It would be a joint project, but
Okay.
I'd be the lead.
And any idea how much staff time we're talking about committing to the exploration phase? And does it fit in one of your priorities that's already sort of laid out for the year, or is it displacing something else? Or?
No, the exploration phase shouldn't take too long. I mean, once you get into it, it'll be a more ongoing commitment. And there is work in our work plans on housing element implementation, and this falls under that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And finally, I gather from the staff report, you felt there is openness within the current Red Board to modifying. I mean, they're the ones who want to expand it. It's never going to expand if it's, everybody pays $50,000 and they get to veto everything. So.
Yeah, we've been very clear that would be DOA if that was what they insisted, and they have been very open to wanting to talk about ways to change it so that it was accessible to all the cities in the county. Yeah.
Well, Sonoma Clean Power has a good decision-making model. Maybe they want to move to that. Thanks.
John, no questions yet. Thank you for the presentation. I think that my questions will be more in the details when you get that far too. I share the same concerns when you look at the model that they have right now. It would be a 4-to-1 vote all the time. So I'm concerned about, would we really have any traction if we're always a lone one? But if they really have an intent to, try and make this be a more regional thing, then best to get on as early as you can for that. But yeah, that's... So then I will open this up for public comment. Can we go to Zoom, please, Kevin?
Yes, thank you, Vice Mayor Harvey. Once again, Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a comment on this item. The first hand is from Lori. You have the floor.
I have some major issues with this. Damien talks about that the county was no houses burned down in Cotati, there was not all that. And they've done a good job, in the city of Santa Rosa. There's tons of extra people. We have like 4 developments coming in. And why would you want to join for 4 people? 4 major developments. There's not buildable room for more than that. And I'm concerned also that this has to do with Freeburg development. When you have a development agreement that's already costing the citizens of this town $2.4 million in local contributions, which is discounted land and lowered impact fees. Why are we spending time and money to help affordable housing, to get help financing for those people? That when we have such limited resources and you guys are wanting to spend it on something that may not help us, it sounds like you just want to join the club, for status. And that's not, it's practicality is not going to work. So I urge you, please do not allow Damien and the city to go forward in this, because we have bigger priorities here. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
There are no further hands on Zoom.
Okay, any more comments?
I'll just say I'm in support of further exploration if it's a potential, gives potential for easing that funding stack difficulty for more highly affordable, high percentage affordable projects, because we're never going to meet affordable housing goals with our inclusionary units. We have to have some developments that are more heavily affordable than that, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. Unfortunately, affordable housing just doesn't get built because for a developer's perspective, it doesn't pencil out. So there's, as you said, there's stacks of funding that have to be put together in order to make it work. And the reality is that affordable housing is needed, and people have said that over and over again in our surveys. It's needed. Unfortunately, there's a gap between what things cost and what what people have to pay to get into them. So we have to look at as many different ways as we can. And if this is a possible tool in the tool chest, which is what I garner from all of this, is it's just another tool to help get housing built. I don't feel like it hurts us to at least do the exploration into seeing whether it would work for us or not. It might not pan out for us, but I don't feel like it was a big, from what I'm hearing, it's not a big staff drain to at least do the exploration, and it would come back once we have more details. So that's my 2 cents.
No, I agree there also. I think we have to turn over every stone to look at, what is out there to help us get these affordable housing units built. So I think it would be well to look at this closer.
Okay, then I would be looking for a motion.
I move that the City Council adopt a motion authorizing the mayor to send a letter expressing interest to join the Renewal Enterprise District Joint Power Authority, authorize the mayor to express the same before the RED Board of Directors, and authorize the city manager to take all necessary steps to fully evaluate RED membership and make recommendations to the City Council at a future date.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Let that show 3 and 2 absent. Thank you for that. Then we will be moving on to the next item, which is consideration of a resolution authorizing application to and participation in the California Department of Housing and Community Development Pro-Housing Designation Program. I'm going to guess this is probably NOAA, but...
Senior Planner John Paul Harries will be lead staff on this.
Okay.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Harvey. Members of the council, my name is J.P. Harris, senior planner with the city of Cotati, and tonight we're talking about the pro-housing designation program and requesting authorization to apply to that program. This this PowerPoint presentation, I also want to kind of give recognition to the Napa Sonoma Collaborative, which is a coalition of jurisdictions that works on housing issues collaboratively. They helped prepare this staff report, our application, and this presentation. So the pro-housing designation was created by and we also have a representative with us in case you do have a question for him. It was created by the legislature through the 2019-2020 Budget Act, and the pro-housing designation was really intended to recognize communities that had developed housing programs that meet the state's agenda and then even go a little bit beyond it in terms of housing development, streamlining, and removing barriers to development. It also, it offers multiple pathways for someone to get it through the way that you do the scoring. You basically assess yourself, and then you talk about that assessment with HCD later, but you assess yourself in multiple ways, and you can gain points in different ways. So different jurisdictions can approach this designation in through different avenues. Next slide, please. So why be pro-housing? Primarily it is because it gives you a greater advantage when you're seeking grants for either infrastructure that supports housing or housing itself, or regional programs to support the development of affordable housing. The previous item would be an example of that. And one of the key ones is what's called this pro-housing. It's hard to see on the slide because it's cut off. The pro-housing incentive program, which is it's a grant that's given to communities that have gotten the pro-housing designation. So I just want to let you know that we concurrently with this, if you choose to authorize this application, we'll be making an application for PIP funding. We'll be bringing that to you sometime in March at one of the 2 meetings in March, and we will accompany our application to HCD. And that PIP funding, we're looking at up to maybe $650,000, which could help multiple programs that the city is interested in. Next slide, please. So the pro-housing principles are increased development capacity and variety, streamline the housing process, that's the entitlement process and construction process, planning consistent with state priorities, to promote equitable communities, and to collaborate to align policies and programs. Bay Area 2050 was mentioned previously, and that's an example of what pro-housing designation would intend to do. Next slide, please. These are just a list of communities that have already gotten the pro-housing designation and those that are remaining. Next slide, please. So the application process is to submit the existing and proposed policies related to housing development with supporting documentation. You have to have at least 1 point per topic area, and you need 30 points total. And then you submit the application. HCD has 60 days to review that application and then get back to us. And then if they need changes in the application, we will do that, and then eventually determine what our score is and whether or not we qualify for the pro-housing designation. And you get the score in 4 different areas: favorable land use and zoning, acceleration of housing production timeframes, reduction of construction and development costs, and providing financial subsidies. And then there's ways to get enhancement points based on how that fits into various approaches to meeting these goals. Next slide, please. You need to have several things in order to receive this designation. One, you have to have a compliant housing element and annual progress reports, which we do. You have to have all your rezones to comply with Government Code 65, I can't read that very well from here, which is that you have zoned appropriately to meet your RENA, which we have done. Compliance with all relevant housing laws, which we always strive for, and compliance for 7 principles for addressing encampments. This is Appendix 5. This is part of the application. It's like, how do we approach homelessness encampments? And we've got well-established policies, plus our collaboration with the county brings us into strong alignment with the U.S. program and their 7 principles. And we have to have a signed formal resolution, which is what we're seeking tonight. Next slide, please. In addition, this is, we have to have a public participation process. This is kind of kicking off that process. And today, well, actually yesterday, we posted our entire application online. We've got a dedicated web page for it. We put out it's kind of like, it's right on the front page of our website. Plus we did a social media blast, and then today emailed well over 100, maybe almost 200 individuals and groups to let them know that our application was available for review. They have 30 days to review it, and then we will respond to their comments and adjust our application accordingly. And anyway, I just want to let you know. So just for the dates on that for you and the public, we'll be closing the 30-day notice period on March 26th. Yes, March 26th. And our intent is to, which is a Thursday, and then our intent is to submit the application to HCD on March 30th, which is the following Monday. Next slide, please. The 7 principles of encampment. So with Appendix 5 of the application is a summary of how we meet those 7 principles. Next slide, please. And I've already mentioned this before, but you need 30 points. You need minimum of 1 point in each category. And we talked about what the different areas that you're going to score yourself in. And let's go to the next slide, please, which is a little more focused on Cotati itself. And it's a wordy slide, but we do a lot. And so we end up with a lot of words. But we're over 100, we've zoned for meeting over 150% of our RENA. We allow construction of middle housing through both the cottage housing ordinance and our zoning is set up that way. The density bonus, our special Cotati density bonus program actually allows additional density beyond the state requirements if they meet certain conditions. We utilize maximum parking, or our parking actually compared to the state density bonus law, it matches it pretty closely, but we're actually a little more liberal because under the state density bonus law for a 4-bedroom, you would require 2.5 parking spaces where we only require 2 parking spaces. So we actually are a little bit better. Plus in the TOC area that was just adopted, we actually got rid of parking minimums and adopted parking maximums. We allow mixed use by right in all of our commercial zones. We encourage higher density housing to be located in our transit areas. And we have an inclusionary housing program. I can't read the rest of it, but that's okay. And then in terms of accelerating housing, we've adopted objective design standards for ministerial projects. We streamline our CEQA analysis by tiering from our programmatic EIRs that were completed for our specific plan, our general plan. We've created streamlining applications and checklists for projects subject to ministerial review. This would be like SB 35. We have kind of a one-stop shop permitting process. We have a single application form with multiple checklists, but so we try to make that process as easy as possible. We also we have recently created a system where generally a planner or someone will stay with the project from beginning to end. So it provides continuity to the applicants, whereas before they'd kind of just come to one department, then get handed off to another department, feel like they're starting the process anew, then go to another department, and we're trying to just smooth that whole process out for our applicants. And we keep we maintain a projects in progress web page, which we disclose all of our projects and the status of all those projects, so people can get information on our projects. Next slide, please. Category 3, we offer pre-reviewed ADU plans on our website. We allow mobile homes in multiple zoning districts. We facilitate the inclusion of universal design in new development. In fact, we have the minimum 10% in any new housing project. And we have a housing fund to implement and/or supplement housing programs. We've leveraged surplus land for the provision of affordable housing. This 120 East Cotati is an example of that. We subsidize 100% affordable housing. We've just adopted a 3-year pilot program to reduce impact fees. And we have an impact fee deferral program so that you don't have to pay impact fees until you're requesting a certificate of occupancy. All of that together, plus some more, that's just kind of a summary of what's going into our scoring, brings us to, we think, 67 points, which is well above the 30 points that we need. And so I think even with HCD and our negotiations with them over what our score is, we're going to feel pretty comfortable that we will get this designation and we'll have a high score, which will make us much more competitive for future grant applications. Next slide, please. And with that, my presentation is ended, and I'm available for questions. And Eli, former employee of ours, is available also, representing the Napa-Sonoma Collaborative.
Yes. Yeah.
Just one, if we're granted the pro-housing designation, does it obligate us to anything beyond what we're already committed to through the general plan and the housing element, et cetera?
No, it doesn't, because of how we've approached it. We are looking at 2 proposed programs. Pretty much everything else is existing. The one proposed program was, which you initiated just in December, maybe it was November, which is the establishment of the EFID fund, or we're looking at the feasibility of an EFID. That's one program we're looking at as proposed. And the other program might be providing pre-approved plans for homes, not just ADUs. So that's, and we're kind of following legislation, state legislation on that.
I see. So you're saying we're including those in the plan and getting points for them, so in some sense that's obligating us to carry through on those?
But those are, I wouldn't say they're obligating us. What we're saying is those are programs that we're proposing to do. Even if we didn't complete those, our score would, I think, would not be adversely affected.
Thanks.
John, do you have questions? So you stated that HCD has 60 days to respond. So is it like an interaction with them? Do you go back and forth with them, or is it like the housing element where you don't hear from them and all of a sudden you get you're rejected for this, and this, and you have to go back in the...
Having not been through the process, I couldn't tell you for sure, but my understanding is that it is an iterative process with HCD.
It's my understanding as well. We're not, we've been talking about this for a long time. The council initially authorized this as a part of the housing element. And we have had a lot of conversations with our Napa-Sonoma Collaborative folks who are essentially acting as our consultants, and they deal with HCD regularly. So we do anticipate it to be a bit of a back and forth. but we're not exactly sure about the format of the responses. It may be a formal letter that we get, but HCD definitely understands that we might need to iterate to check all their boxes.
Because it feels like, just like everything else, you need to expedite this, and if they do the usual, my concern is if they do the usual HCD model of here, hurry up and wait, then that doesn't really help very much. Second, you mentioned that on one of the items that we have updates on projects. We get questions quite often on updates on projects. Do we have a time schedule on that, or we don't run the projects themselves. The projects are there, but they're done by private developers. How do we go about, I guess, what's the process for getting those updates? Because it seems like we don't get very good updates from developers.
Are you asking about after a project's approved?
Well, he mentioned that we put on our website updates on projects, but they are not necessarily timely. The projects are out there, but updates is...
So yeah, I can understand the perspective. So to your point, you know, a development application once submitted essentially stays active for 6 months. Even if we hear nothing for 6 months from the developer, that's still a valid application. So as we get new information, we update the projects in progress page. As every resubmittal is received, new plan sets, new comments, or approval steps are made, that's updated on the status of the projects in progress page. But to your point, you know, it could be a 1.5 year timeline from first submittal to approval. So that may not feel like the community is getting timely updates, but it's just the nature of the process.
Okay, that's what I was afraid of. And John, you had no questions, right? Okay, then I will open this up for public comment. Can we go to Zoom, please?
Yes, thank you, Vice Mayor Harvey. We do have a hand on Zoom. Once again, Zoom attendees, please use that raise hand icon if you'd like to make a comment. Lori, you have the floor.
Hi. Through this whole thing, I was like, how can we be pro-housing when nothing has been built? Roanoke Park House, I believe, has this, and they built all this housing. You spend all this money over the last 2 or 3 years to qualify for policies. You spend our tax dollars to be a transit-oriented community, all the other qualifiers, but not built anything. It doesn't help the people of Cotati, it helps the developers. To spend this, keep spending money and getting these designations on hopes of getting grants, and especially national, in California and everything seems to be affordable housing monies, grants seem to be lessening lately. This is way beyond what was necessary for our small town to have all these, and all the time that was spent, all the staff costs, and everything. I truly admire JB, but he's done a great job, but this was unnecessary. We are a small town with little buildable land. And the money could have been going to people like my mom's newest caregiver, who transit-oriented community. She lives by the SMART station downtown in Santa Rosa. She has to take the SMART train, and then she has to take a Uber that costs her $7 to get to the west side of Cotati. That's what the kind of money should be funding, is like vouchers for people like her, or instead of high-cost policies that may or may not ever get us money. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
There are no further hands. Vice Mayor Harvey, that will end public comment.
Okay. Yeah, affordable housing is not necessarily affordable, as we've seen some of the costs on it. I don't have a magic ball or magic wand or anything. It seems like some developers can get it done and have abilities to absorb costs, and some don't, and I don't know what the magic solution is, but it feels like whatever we can do to help to move, because it's definitely not that we're not entitling projects, because we have entitled lots of projects, and we definitely are including inclusionary housing in that, but it just, for whatever reason, they're not getting built. So whatever tools we can use to help get them built, I think we're better off. So I'd be looking for a motion.
Well,
or
I was just going
comments,
to
yeah.
say,
Yeah.
I agree with everything you said, and it is, like, we put as much staff time into this application as Santa Rosa did, and these sort of stacks of state programs that all require us to respond to them cost us as much staff time as a city 10 times, 20 times our size, which is a real problem, the way the system works. I agree with that. But this is a tool to try to help us get some of those things built that we all wish were getting built, so I'm certainly in support. So I'm happy to make a motion that we approve a resolution of the City Council of the City of Cotati authorizing application to and participating in the pro-housing designation program.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Let that show a 3 with 2 absent vote. And we are going to look to take a 5-minute break. Okay, everyone? Oh, you're welcome. You ready, Kevin? Okay, I'd like to call this meeting back to order, and we will move on to our next item, which is our annual police chief report to the community. I believe, Chief Simmons, you are taking this item.
I wanted to give it to Noah, but I guess he didn't
But
want to
he
take
didn't
it.
want
so
it.
I thought
Okay.
I thought I'd take it
Well,
because I don't want
you
what
tried.
I don't want what he has to do. So I'll go ahead and handle this on my end. All right. So good evening. It's my privilege to present to you the Cotati Police Department's annual report. This current presentation marks the 6th annual report that we've done. First was in 2020, and the report today is presented for the 2025 calendar year. Next slide. We start out the report with a message from me. It's posted on our website, touches on our overarching mission to serve the community. I've been here as the chief for over 2 years now, and I certainly appreciate the opportunity to serve the citizens and you all here, so thank you very much. And next slide. As before, the primary meat and potatoes of this report really is data-driven with various charts and stats, and also touches on the community outreach and involvement that we've had over the years, and it also includes some training that we've been involved in over the years as well. Next slide. This is our org chart, reflects present day, although this is a 2025 annual report. We have 13 sworn positions, 8 non-sworn civilian positions. As you see, we have 1 police officer vacancy right now. We had 3, but we sponsored 1 recruit through the academy in 2025. He graduated with top honors and did a great job through our field training, so we're really happy about that. And he's a solo beat officer, and we also had someone that we sponsored who graduated the academy before him in 2025 and is also a solo officer as well. So we just have the 1 vacancy now. We're taking applications now, so we'll be moving forward with that. Probably not to the next academy that will probably be eligible, probably won't be till the end of the year. So it's a little bit out on that vacancy. So we have 0 dispatch vacancies, which is huge for us because if you recall last year, and actually the beginning of 2025, we were below minimum staffing and hurting in a real way. So thanks to all the recruiting efforts of the staff, we got some folks together. So we have 0 dispatch vacancies, 3 dispatchers to run a full dispatch center earlier in 2025, which was a huge challenge. We have 2 part-time dispatchers that are filling some holes too, so that helps us kind of fill in the gaps. So it's really great from a dispatch standpoint. We're very healthy right now. Next slide. All right, moving and taking a look at some of the broader stats for the department. For calls for service, we had a total of 12,882 total events in 2025, which is actually slightly up from the 12,610 events in 2024, and significantly up from the 11,217 events from 2023 and so forth. So calls for service and officer-initiated activity, we had a comparative increase in the year prior than, like I just mentioned, but calls for service were up by 773, and officer-initiated activities, it shows down by 501, which seems like a lot, but when you actually just look at, I can talk a little more about this, some of our DUI enforcement and those sorts of things were just so high in 2024 that we've leveled off, but they're still high when you compare them to the last few years. So the last 2 years, respectively, have been very high in terms of our activity, calls for service and or officer-initiated activity. Next slide. Looking at arrest stats, we had a total of 509 arrests in 2025. That's versus 557 arrests in 2024, compared to 382 in 2023 and 385 in 2022. So the last 2 years, like I mentioned, have seen a notable uptick in arrests. Last year, much of that had to do with our DUI arrests. I'll just mention again that we had our one officer, Cunningham in particular, that was making a number of record-breaking DUI arrests. Yet again, this year he was doing not as many, but just a whole lot of traffic education enforcement and obviously a lot of focus on impaired driving. I'll mention a couple things because there was some clarification. By the way, I should mention this was presented to the police, the advisory committee last week, and so there was some dialogue and some questions obviously that some of that. So I'll address those as I'm going along, if that's all right, just so you kind of have a sense of some of the engagement that I had with those 5 folks on the committee. One of which came up, some conversation, or at least some questions, and I think this came up last year, regarding arrested versus cited versus 849 detention release, right? It's a little confusing to the point where next year we're going to clean this up and clarify it a little bit. So arrests are where the actual suspects were booked into custody, right? So that's that blue there. Cited is not like sometimes people think that's a traffic cite. That's not like a citation. That's actually an arrest, but certain low-level arrests, we can cite them out, right? So we cite them with a court date to appear in court with a promise to appear, a certain misdemeanor arrest, but it's still an arrest. They could be taken to jail, but they were cited out in the field for a promise to appear in court. 849 means that it can mean a number of things, but it essentially means that they're arrested but released on the scene, or more than likely, the DA didn't file charges at that time. And then again, that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the case, but again, with these sometimes low-level crimes and that sort of thing, so they may be arrested, they may go to jail, but if the DA doesn't file, we actually have to go back in the system and make it what's called an 849 arrest rather than an actual arrest. It's still an arrest, so that's why it counts toward the total, but 72 times there were arrests that were either the DA didn't file. So there's certain actual types of crimes, like one's called 647F, which is drunk in public. So it's basically, we arrest that person, we may even take them to jail, they sober up, they get released. By the law, it's not counted as an arrest. So it's listed under the 849, but it's still someone we actually took into custody. So hopefully that makes a little more sense. But if you take all that away, the bottom line is that there was 509 arrests that were made where someone was taken into custody, either transported to jail or cited out one way or the other. So hopefully that makes some sense of that. Next slide. So this is NIBR's National Incident-Based Reporting System, different types of crimes. I always mention that these types of crimes they don't directly correlate with the California Penal Code. So this is their terminology, not ours. We put this in the database. This is a number that comes back out again. Again, I think next year we may clean up some of this data so it actually makes more sense to our own crimes. So we're actually talking apples to apples, and just in terms of terminology, because some of these the terminology that they use, the vernacular they use, isn't something that's really found in our penal code. So in any event, nothing that different regarding persons crimes or property crimes. Actually, next slide, please. You'll see some upticks here and there, but when you actually look at the numbers, you're talking about 3, 4, 5. So nothing that's too crazy that would show an uptick in something that we're necessarily paying specific attention to. With property crimes, we're always looking at thefts. We're always looking at commercial thefts. I'm hoping that, with the passage of Prop 36 and that getting businesses and encouraging businesses to report crimes, a lot of them, especially a number of years ago, weren't even calling us. They were just, writing it off and that sort of thing. So I'm glad to see that we're getting more engagement from the businesses, so that some of the outreach that I and some of the officers have done over the last year or so in talking to folks and encouraging them to call us when something happens, contemporaneous too, because a lot of times we'll get these calls, sometimes days later, oh, this happened, just so you know, and it's like, there's nothing I can do with that, right? So it makes it very difficult. But anyway, so it's encouraging to at least, I'm hoping these numbers obviously will continue to drop, or will drop. But at first blush, it looks like a lot of things rose, but you're talking about 1, 2, 3 types of numbers. So it's not like there's a huge, massive uptick, at least looking at these particular numbers. Next slide. As mentioned, our DUIs are high. And again, in terms of proactive arrests for impaired driving, I mentioned already all the good work that the folks have done this year. Our Officer Cunningham got over 100 this year, not the 148 that he got the year before, but 100's pretty good. Actually, it's over 100. And then we have a number of other officers that are going this year yet again to the Mothers Against Drunk Driving, the MAT awards that they got last time. We'll be getting those again for 2025. So that's exciting. Next slide.
Chief, do you want questions as you hit the slides?
Either way.
Do you want them? Okay.
Yeah, if something comes up, if you want to, we can talk about it right now if you would like.
Okay. So you mentioned on the property stuff,
Yes.
The shoplifting, for instance, went up by 5. 5's not a lot, but How are we educating the businesses on the differences now that we have Prop 36?
Physically going out and talking to them, and anytime that they call too, the dispatch is encouraging them, like, okay, thank you for calling, like, just there's some subtle nuances to some of that, but we're actually going out and talking to the businesses, especially those like the Lowe's, the Walgreens, the gas stations, the ones that we are just constantly, when we're seeing these sorts of crimes, and letting them know about, you know, any kind of like Prop 36 was a big thing where we could educate them on that, right? And so that's been helpful. But I think also one of the things is actually seeing that we proactively go out, like our officers are going out and just checking in on them. Hey, everything going okay? And hey, let us know if there's anything going on. If you ever have a problem, okay, you know, just that level of engagement, they feel more, we just get more calls on it. And so some of this may also be an uptick in reporting. Right?
That was my next question, because
Right.
that, before you said, you know, the stuff might level out, but it might go up first before it levels out, because they realize that if I call you, you're going to do something, whereas, you know, 5 years ago, it'd be like, well, yeah, good luck with that.
Right,
You
well, and
know?
that's the irony of these statistics, right? Because actually, last year, it may have even been higher. They may have actually gone down, we just don't know because the level of reporting may have changed, right? So what actually happened and what's being reported to us, there's always that gap in the data. So this is obviously what we know, and that's the best we can do in that regard.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions for now? All right. On to citations. We're on 10. So you'll see moving violations, meaning that's the writing of tickets, citations for moving violations, traffic stops. Pretty much steady from last year. Always consider when you look at moving violations with regards to when you look at actually how many times that there were traffic stops performed. We'll talk a little bit about that during RIPA. But when you're looking at moving violations, a lot of times they could potentially be higher, but if you factor in arrests, a lot of times during, you know, an officer may pull someone over for a moving violation, it ends up becoming an arrest, like a DUI arrest. They usually don't cite them for, you know, rolling the stop sign that they're originally going to cite them for. So that brings the citation numbers down, but the arrest is something that they're doing instead of. So sometimes when people, all these chiefs, when they look at proactivity, they say, oh, wait a minute, you know, what's going on here? But then you look at the other things that are going on. You have to look at it a little more holistically. So anyway, I only mention it. That's just one example of that sort of thing. But in any event, our moving violations is the main thing that people pay attention to, and they're pretty static from the last couple of years. Next slide, please. So as mentioned, we had 12,882 events and in 2025, and of all those events, we had 2 complaints. We had 5 in 2024, 4 in 2023. The ones in 2025 equate to 0.01% of everything that we handled in 2025. So, of course, we always strive for 0, but to only have 2 in 25, 5 last year, 4 the year before, and actually our high was 9 in 2022, but even by that is pretty low. So I feel fortunate as a manager to have very low complaints in that regard. Both were procedural in nature. That means, so they didn't go to IA. There was nothing that required an outsource, nothing that required a complex investigation, nothing that that led to discipline. So they were minor in terms of their complaint. I will say, so let's go to the next slide.
Chief, do you circle back with the complainant?
Yep.
Okay.
Every time.
And do
Yep. And so there's limited information that we tell them because it's a personnel issue, right? But we do circle back with them and tell them the ultimate outcome of what happened with their complaint.
Okay, thank you.
And let's see, which one are we on? 12? Yep. So both complaints were unfounded or lacked evidence to support the allegation. So without going too much into the complaints, like I said, they were procedural in nature and they were low level in nature. So, next slide. All right, so jumping into the SAFE team. So we work in partnership with South County SAFE team. And as you've heard me talk about, they provide outreach for the unhoused, those suffering from mental health issues and addiction, and provide some basic medical care and resources for those that are in need. They're 24/7, they're field level. We dispatch for SAFE in Cotati and SSU. They're part of a van that also is incorporated with Rohnert Park. And with the vast majority of their calls, there'll be another slide on this. they're dispatched to, they can do some proactivity as well, but most of the calls that they're involved in, they're dispatched through our dispatch. Someone calls and they have an issue or something that SAFE could be helpful for, and we'll dispatch SAFE. Sometimes that's by themselves, meaning just SAFE. Sometimes that's with an officer. Sometimes an officer may go out to a scene, assess a situation, and feel that it's low level enough and there's no threat, there's no public safety issue, that maybe someone could have some resources that SAFE can offer, and then we'll dispatch SAFE. The officer will dispatch SAFE through our dispatch for them to come. So there's a variety of ways in which they interact with our community. Next slide. These are the SAFE stats that were provided to us by SAFE. They had 219 calls for service in 2025. As I mentioned, like with 41 needing police services. So again, the idea with something like this ultimately is to lessen the opportunities for uniformed police to be interacting with the community that could potentially be, with mental health folks. And there's that fine line between someone turning volatile or being volatile or dangerous. We don't want to put our SAFE folks in any kind of danger, but at the same time, not escalating if we don't have to, a uniformed officer when maybe that presence doesn't need to be there, and we can just have our SAFE folks and they can deal with that at a low level. And also, like I mentioned, SAFE isn't just for mental health necessarily, homelessness, providing resources, and obviously there's between addiction, mental health, homelessness, there's bridges to all those things, and that's why something like SAFE is vital to us. So actually, let's go to the next slide. As mentioned, we dispatch, almost 90% for them, and they will do self-initiated. They will go out on self-initiated. They will drive by because they're field level, which is great, unlike some other mental health response teams that are just basically, they only come when you call them, right? So that 11% is, to me, a critical 11% where they go out and they see somebody who might need some help, and they'll go out and they'll dispatch themselves to that, and they'll go out on that. And obviously, sometimes that will escalate, and we'll end up having to go out there. But a lot of times, it's just them helping someone who's in need and offering resources, and they do that. So that's something that it keeps our staff dealing with the priority 1 calls and the critical calls, and the SAFE staff dealing with some of those lower level. Not to minimize them, but lower level, at least in terms of public safety. Next slide. All right, into RIPA. So to remind everyone that a RIPA stop is defined as any detention or search with the goal to collect perceived data regarding pedestrian and traffic stops. Note that this also includes dispatched calls for service. So some agencies, they don't include their dispatch calls for service, but if there's a detention or a search during that dispatch call for service, it is a RIPA stop, so we count it. And so sometimes you'll see varying data from different agencies, and that's one of a number of problems with RIPA when doing comparative data among other agencies. But for purposes of what we do here in Cotati, per the RIPA standard, detention or search is if either one or both of those things were to occur, then it's to be logged as a RIPA stop. Next slide. You'll see that our total number of events are up slightly, and since our total number of events and contacts with people were up this year compared to 2024 anyway, obviously that reflects in some of the RIPA numbers as well. A little more arrests, more proactivity, more reporting, that sort of thing. So next slide. So it's divided between 2024 and 2025 down the middle, so it's not one big graph, so you can maybe see that line below the subtitles there. But if you look at, looking at the data itself, statistics are similar from this year to last year. As I mentioned on the left is 2024, right 2025. The last 2 years are similar to 2023 as well. So we've been pretty much across the board with fairly similar in our percentages with our RIPA data. One of the things that came up, which routinely comes up, is the demographic overlay question regarding the percentages that are here. Just for some information, because I happened to have it available when we were discussing this during the Community Police Advisory Committee. The question was about the demographic data here in Cotati. So about 76, the two biggest ones obviously are the white population and Hispanic Latinx population. So 76% white and 19 Hispanic. And if you look at like Roanoke Park is 63 to 31, SSU is 41 to 40, so a higher 40% Hispanic population out of SSU stats. Santa Rosa is 60 to 30, Petaluma 69-20, Sonoma County 65 to 30. Looking at California, 34 white to 41 Hispanic. The Bay Area is 41 white, 25 Hispanic, so it goes up and down a little bit here. So again, just looking at that considering that when you look at our data, because when you consider how many people are coming through Cotati and how many are not residents that we're actually contacting, then we can't just factor in the Cotati demographic, and even to factor in any of these demographics is a little bit of a fuzzy math, but at least it gives you some context when you're looking at that to see kind of where we are in relation to demographic data. Next slide. Perceived gender, this is consistent across what we've seen over the years. Typically, men get in more trouble than women do. There's that. But in terms of contact that we have, a high percentage is obviously those who identify as men. And again, that's perceived by our officers as well. So keep that in mind as well. Next slide. Age group. Not uncommon or unique from national averages either. Ages 18 to 24, police initiating contact is 14%. I mentioned this last year because I personally would have thought that a particular population would have a slightly elevated, that population would be slightly elevated because of SSU, but it doesn't appear so, at least not according to RIPA data. So other than that, the age data isn't particularly telling in any way, at least to me, looking at it from Cotati versus the state versus Bay Area versus national averages. Next slide. As mentioned, the majority of what we do from a RIPA data standpoint are traffic stops and traffic violations. So most of the time, I think you've all been on ride-alongs, that you can't tell the race when you're pulling someone over, generally, 9 times out of 10. Sometimes you can, but a lot of times you can't. And also, we're talking about dispatch calls for service as well, and when you include that, obviously, we have no idea who we're showing up to unless they're familiar with an address or a house or a person at the time of the dispatch. But again, when that phone call comes through, they don't know the race of the person that they're going to. But anyway, when you look at these stats, obviously, the traffic violation is obviously going to be high. When you look at a few of these others, a reasonable suspicion, a person was engaged in criminal activity, that's usually going to be under a dispatch call for service. So they get to the call, they determine a crime has been committed, and they end up effecting an arrest as an example of that. Next slide. So looking at searches, as you can see, the vast majority of contacts that qualified as RIPA had no searches conducted. So what does that mean? Traffic stops, right? When you get a traffic stop, you pull someone over, 9 times out of 10, you're not searching them, right? You're issuing them a citation, a warning, and that sort of thing. But because a traffic stop is considered a detention, it's considered a RIPA stop. So that's where it falls into there. So that's why no search is still a RIPA stop, because we're talking about detention or a search, right? Red light behind you, you're detained. The officer says you can't leave until he gives you a warning or citation, whatever it is. So that falls under RIPA. Then now, looking at this small chunk, are actual searches related to RIPA. Now, keep in mind, this is where the data gets a little funky because you can have a search and you can have a detention, or you can have a detention and a search at the same time. You can also have one that is part of a parole search, and you find something and you effect an arrest and you arrest them, and so you've searched them incident to arrest. So which box did you check, right? So somewhere in there is one of the boxes that they checked. Right,
and they can only check one box?
No, so they can check multiple boxes, but so there is a training component to that to try to check as many as you can, but then how much are you double reporting on something? And so we have to try to distill those numbers as well. So it becomes a little complicated, right? So, and what I will point out, so if you look at the incident to arrest, because if you actually look at the total numbers, I like to do this in percentages, and I actually just noticed this the other day. But the numbers, the actual physical numbers that are listed here are more than the numbers of RIPA that we reported, right? So that's a problem, right? It's because it's the incident to arrest category. It used to say 78, We pumped it to 509 because we reported we had 509 arrests. And in every arrest, we searched somebody because we had the lawful reason to do so, right? So when you effect an arrest, you can search somebody incident to arrest, right? So the 78 isn't an accurate number, right? So we had to move it up to the 509. That means that it would carve out some of that dark green color, so it's a little bit less there was more searches than that. It was because of the incident to arrest. And again, it's because they may arrest somebody but not hit the incident to arrest, or they may have not put that they searched them even though they detained and arrested them. So they didn't hit the box, even though they're filling out the RIPA data fairly correctly, but they're not hitting that last part with the searching. Does that make sense? So there's a training issue on one side, there's also a data entry, and there's also a data interpretation. So when you look at actually the RIPA data that's entered at the state level, it's different. The Cotati cleanup that we do is more accurate than what the state has. So that's why we go back and do it again. It's a little clunky, but it's the best that we got right now. So in the effort of being as transparent as possible, that's what we have in front of us. So any questions on that? Good, okay, next slide. The duration of stops tend to be the average of a traffic stop, 48 minutes. Verbal warning time frame, typically 9 to 14 minutes is kind of the writing of the citation time. And then it drops down, and the only reason it ticks back up again is for either a dispatch call for service type of thing, or you're talking about a traffic stop that led to a further investigation, like a DUI arrest or something like that. So that may be, they could be there for an hour doing field sobriety tests, doing that sort of thing. So that's where you see it kind of bump back up again. Next slide. As I mentioned before about citations, we do a lot of verbal warnings, we do some citations, and our numbers are relatively the same from the last couple of years. There's the I did want to bring up the no action example. That could be dispatch call to a subject, and say the dispatch call is that he's drunk, and then we go out there and we detain him because maybe he's acting drunk, and then we determine he's not acting drunk, and maybe there's just nothing going on with him or something going on, whatever it is, and then that's just a contact, and then that's it. And so that would be no action, right? So sometimes we'll contact people because we're dispatched to certain things, and they end up being, oh, there's a woman with a knife, and we go out there, detain her, there's no knife, there's no nothing, it was falsely reported that way, no action taken beyond that. So that's where you'll see some of that. Next slide. So the high-low in 2024 and in 2025, we conducted online education outreach and a video that shows what high-low siren is and what the purpose is. I think I mentioned this last year. So in 2023, the department, we went to various parts of the city and demonstrated the high-low, and it created a little bit of chaos. And no matter how much training and front-loading you did, people wondered what was going on and why they were hearing the London siren going on, so they didn't understand it. So we found that through some education outreach and doing the video itself is good training, right? So we're going to stick with that for now, and I'll mention that you'll see that Cotati's split up into some evac zones that actually corresponds with our beat structure as well for more efficient operational and deployment purposes with our staff. Next slide. DEA drug takeback, usually twice a year, April and October, but we found that we aren't actually getting much from these single day events. And so we did host an event in April of 2025, but did not do one in October. Instead, what we have is actually a bin in our public access in our lobby right now that you can dispose of prescription pills anytime, any day throughout the year. So it's just anyone can come in anytime. So rather than having it twice a year and that's it, we have this bin where we routinely change it out. So that's what we just do on a regular basis, and it works great. So next slide. We're proud of Sergeant Wardle. He graduated his Supervisory Leadership Institute on April 24th. It's a great program to build up competencies of our supervisory staff with specialized supervision and accountability training. I'm a huge fan of field level supervision when it comes to accountability, and I think that's, we can talk about all the different aspects of things like RIPA and different ways to try to foster leadership in our staff, but really frontline supervision and making sure that our supervisors are properly prepared and armed with good tools and good training is what's going to make our staff do well, and it creates a healthy organizational culture on top of it. So I like to I like to throw that out there and have a slide just dedicated to that anytime we have someone go to that sort of specialized training. It's a lot of training, and it's a lot of effort and sacrifice to do it, and he did a really good job. Next slide. So we do a great deal of training, post-mandated training and perishable skills training, and we always make sure to be well above the minimum standards in the state. Those are some of the perishable skills training listed there. Next slide. And if you really just want a list of training and you want some data download, there it is right there. So that's some of the trainings that reflect our commitment to train our officers and staff well beyond the post minimum standards and all the additional specialized training. And it's a lot when you're talking about just the basic minimum, especially in California, where California is the highest trained officers in the nation. We just are, and which is great. And so when you actually start looking at and you're going across the nation, not to say anything bad about any of their agencies, but in different states, it's a whole new ballgame with training and the lack of training that a lot of officers have. So it's a lot of dedication, it's a lot of staff time, it's a lot of money. But it's well worth it when you get the byproduct of a good officer with all that training. So, next slide. All right, moving on to ALPR. So, we had a little bit of a discussion with the Police Advisory Committee regarding the different ALPRs that we currently have. So there's the Axon and there's the Flock, and I'll mention both. To try to clarify. So we currently deploy 4 Axon ALPR cameras in patrol vehicles. So our patrol vehicles have ALPR cameras, and they are of the Axon variety. So unfortunately, though, they've been in various stages of non-function because they were all put in the EVs, and so we had issues with the EVs that we had to decommission because of some of the update and upfit issues and software issues and that sort of thing. So now we are taking those Axon ALPRs and putting them into the new cars, the 2 new cars that we just got, and a couple of the other cars as well. So with 2026, I'll hopefully have some Axon ALPR information to share with you. But for 2025, they were basically non-op the whole year. Conversely, we have Flock that you all know that we started up. So Flock are the stationary cameras. We have 2 that finally got operational at the tail end of 2025. So again, not a lot of data from them right now, but I will say in the few months that we've had them, we've positively identified vehicles in the commission of crimes in our city, stolen vehicles, we've arrested suspects, recovered stolen property, and located stolen license plates, and been able to communicate with other neighboring agencies when they've had, well, both have happened. They've had a crime that's coming into our city, or we've had a crime that's going into their jurisdiction, and been able to communicate that and either effect arrest or identify that vehicle, et cetera. So, and in particular, our relationship with Lowe's is really, really good with all the crime. We solved a really good crime with some folks that were coming in and stealing thousands and thousands of dollars worth of merchandise. We were able to track them back to Santa Rosa, made an arrest, did a search warrant, the whole 9 yards, so it was really good. So we're seeing already the benefits of it, even in the short month or 2 that we've had them. Next slide. All right, going into use of force data. When you look at this particular slide, I only bring it up because it shows the contrast of at least what the California Department of Justice use of force incident reporting database requires, right? And it's usually involving shootings, use of force with serious bodily injury or death, et cetera. Obviously, at Cotati, we track use of force a lot more, with more definition. In fact, any display of any force, or any display of force, specifically unholstering specific police tools, electronic devices, tasers, for example, pepper spray, firearm, we track that. A lot of agencies don't because they don't consider it a use of force necessarily, but we track it because I think it's an interesting marker to look at. And any use of force by a peace officer, by any of our officers, beyond simple handcuffing. So I think it's a good thing to look at in that regard. But in terms of state requirements, there's no requirement beyond. If it doesn't meet the level of great bodily injury, you don't have to report it. So anyway, next slide. So in that vein, looking at that, so again, you'll hear me say this number again, 12,882. So of those thousands of contacts that we had with people, we had 37 use of force incidents or events, And again, 48 times use of force was utilized by an officer. So you may have an event, 37 events, and within those events, you may have multiple officers that had to use force. You may have had some multiple suspects. One event may have had a number of use of force tools or deployments that happen. So because of that, you'll see a higher number than the events. That's typical. That happens. That always happens. So, but what this all means is that 0.29% of the time our officers were required to use force. That the California average is 0.5, and the national average is 1.7. So we're well below it. And I already mentioned about the displays of force. It's not that displays are not physical force. And 16 of our 48 of our force numbers are display only, so not physically using force. So that percentage drops even more. 26 of those were simple control holds or defensive techniques when attempting to effect an arrest or handcuff a suspect, so low level, which leaves 4 taser deployments and 2 wraps. And wraps is just a restraint device when someone's being combative, and that holds them, basically wraps them up, straps them into like a gurney type of device, and then they're transported to the hospital or the jail depending on what their need is. So when you look at all that, our use of force, actual use of force with tools, like less than lethal tools like taser are extremely low. Next slide. And these are just some definitions of uses of force. Next slide. All right, so here I want to give a moment of silence to our command van. We have decommissioned and it is no longer in service, so it's, I know, it was limping along for many years and it is now, it's going to be off. We decommissioned it in 2025, so it shows up here, but you'll see next year you will not see it. We still keep the beanbag shotgun because we haven't, I may have loosely mentioned the 40 millimeter or some other less lethal options that might be better than the less lethal shotgun for a few reasons. But we haven't gone to that yet, so we still carry that shotgun. We're not using it at all or haven't had any cause to use it, so it shows as 0 deployments on this slide. Next slide. So Neighborhood Watch and community beat meetings. We did 2 meetings in 2025. Fairly low attendance, especially at the second meeting, to the point where we may try to figure out if there's any other things that we can do that might be educational from a beat meeting Neighborhood Watch standpoint, but actually have more interaction with the community. And what the reality is, what we find is we went to 30 to 40 community events in 2025, just like the year before. That's where we're actually interacting with people. So I think having just more information available when we go out to those sorts of events that are non-police, that's where, because people don't necessarily want to go to the police department. I think they want to just go out and go to fun events. So just making sure that our presence is out there, whether we put up a booth or don't put up a booth, but that our officers are there, giving information, letting people know what's going on. I think that's where we really see good dividends with our interaction with the community, not with necessarily this. And that's, which is kind of a shame, but at the same time, we're going to look at and see if there's something we can do to tweak this in a way that's actually more meaningful, because I think. Yeah, so National Night Out, we have a lot of people. What if your officers, instead of handing out food, we had volunteers handing food out, and your officers could interact more with people actually attending that? Yeah, and they do both, yeah. Right? So I think that
it's really well attended.
Yeah, it is. So it's nice, and even then, we find that our officers, when they're not even going to, like, it could be anything. It could be a Halloween. It could be Easter. It could be whatever it is that they're doing the same thing. But yeah, even at police events, so Coffee with the Cop and National Night Out are the 2 kind of police events that are outside elsewhere. That's where we get a lot of interaction with our communities. So either upping that to something else, whether we do a Neighborhood Watch community beat meeting out in a park and make it into something else, maybe that's an option, or just beefing up some of the stuff we're already doing, which is probably the more viable option, and making sure that our officers are interacting more. We do have volunteers that do help us out, especially at National Night Out, and they're typically the ones handing out pamphlets or handing out food, that sort of thing. So our officers are kind of standing around, swarming the area and talking to people and educating them on different things. But also giving them, I think there's room to give them certain scripts that the officers can also give to people when they're coming, rather than just kind of like, hey, how's it going in your community, kind of general, which is fine, but also informing them of some actual kind of key pieces that I think are important for people to know about the way we do business. So Next slide. Just an overview of what we do in patrol. This is a slide that will probably live indefinitely in some form or fashion, but we do update it here and there. But basically, for those that are interested in the day-to-day operations that we do and our patrol functions that we have. Next slide. As you know, we do animal control. We partner with Roanoke Park Animal Shelter, and these are photos of some of the animals that have been located and taken into custody. We always advocate for microchipping your animal, even if I don't know if that was a pet snake. I don't think it was. They were definitely pet goats. Next slide. Dispatch, the main thing I have to say about them is that their staffing is full and life is good and they're healthy, and that's really a great thing. And it was a little worrisome at the beginning of the year. So it's great because we're a PSAP, because we dispatch for SAFE, because we dispatch for Sonoma State, not just for Cotati. So it's an important component of what we do. So it's something we want to continue to do and not outsource that if we can at all help it. Next slide. Canine Dolly and Officer Sullivan. For those who don't know, tracking Canine Bloodhound Dolly. In 2025, she was requested 44 times from agencies throughout Sonoma and Marin counties. She was fully deployed 10 times, had 3 successful finds, and she attended 7 community events. So she located an assault suspect, missing dementia patient, and found a source of a pool of blood that was located that was evidence in a violent crime. When she alerts to finding someone, she howls in excitement for her squeaky toy. Little known fact, now known to all. Next slide. As mentioned, we have cadets and volunteers. Currently we have 3 cadets and 6 volunteers, plus we have some SSU intern ride-alongs that come. So because as part of their administrative justice program over there, we'll have folks come over and do ride-alongs in conjunction with that. Next slide. Speaking of community events, so as I mentioned, we went to over 30 community events in 2025, and most of them are not police events. And so, again, trying to capitalize on any time that the city has certain events and that we can participate in that, and making sure, even if nothing else, whether we're dedicating officers to that event or if the officers, just whoever's working the beat on that given day, are always coming by and saying hi to folks and checking in on any kind of event that we have. Next slide. A few commendations just to mention. Officer Sullivan, with his commitment to traffic safety and DUI enforcement, plus, of course, his contributions to the community and the greater Sonoma County with his canine assists, was our Officer of the Year. And Police Services Specialist Katie Holdman, with all of her efforts, especially with regards to recruiting and the background process, and a lot of the HR on the police side with getting folks on the dispatch and getting us up to healthy staffing levels. She did a really, really good job, a lot of extra heavy lifting there, and so she was our Employee of the Year as well. And we had a total of 71 total commendations in 2025. In 2024, we had 61, so we had even more this year. That's great. Next slide. And here's just a final snapshot of some 2026 thoughts in terms of where we're focusing and going forward. I mentioned the SAFE team, and we're seeking long-term funding for field-level mental health response, Measure O funding, and trying to find ways to make some, like I said, long-term funding for SAFE because we think it's a valuable asset for our city and our community. The Community Police Advisory Committee, trying to find new ways to engage with them and new ways in which they can offer their insight, and then we can bring that back to council and continue that dialogue as well. Focus on traffic and DUI. I mentioned supervisor organization. Supervision, again, is really important to me. We currently have 2 sergeants and 1 corporal, and looking at potentially if there's a way to enhance supervision. Those sorts of things cost money. But looking forward, I want to see if there's ways that we can make sure that we have consistent supervision across the board with our staff. I think it just makes for a healthier organization. I didn't mention it earlier. I talked about this with the Community Police Advisory Committee. So we got a cannabis tax grant from CHP. It ended up getting a new vehicle, new equipment, new training. That's one of the things that's helped us. When you get an alternate funding stream that injects some extra money, it's given us some extra opportunities to really do some good education and training with regards to traffic enforcement, which is a big deal here in the city. So really thankful about that. We had Shish Gap State Homeland Security grant as well for some radio equipment, which is very expensive equipment, so it's nice that that can come from another funding source as well. So continuing to find more funding sources and alternate funding streams for going forward. And the staffing, recruiting, training, the whole 9 yards. So, and our commitment to community outreach, and those are the main core factors and the things that we focus on beyond just the day-to-day public safety, getting calls for service, and going out there and keeping the community safe. So, on that note, next slide. Thank you for your support, and any questions that you have, I'm here to answer.
Okay. Thanks for the report.
Yes, sir.
A bunch of questions, I just sort of saved them instead of trying to do as we went. So,
Great.
do we have more drunk drivers, or do other jurisdictions just not enforce as much?
Well, I guess that depends on who you ask. Honestly, I think that we do a lot of proactivity when it comes to DUI enforcement. That's just the bottom line. So when you compare, we're doing a lot more DUI interaction and enforcement, impaired driving enforcement than other agencies. I think that's just, it's an interest that the staff have, and it's a priority that I've made when I came here was just because of the nature. People say, well, is it because of the bars? Is it because of the cannabis? Is it because of whatever? And it's because of anything, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of these people are coming in from other jurisdictions having been drunk at, been drinking, consuming alcohol at friends' house, at parties, and, and some of them are obviously going to bars here, and some of them are coming from friends' houses. And so it's hard to pinpoint where they're coming from necessarily. But I think that we have, because of 116, because of Old Red, because of East Cotati, there's just that constant funnel of traffic and downtown, obviously. And so I think our officers, and because we're small, we're out and about, and our response times are very quick. And so that's advantageous to us being so small, is that things just stand out, right? And so I think that's great, and especially at night, especially when there's, the DUIs are higher, that they're doing a lot of proactive enforcement. Not to say that other agencies aren't doing that. I don't pretend to know what other agencies have in terms of their workload and that sort of thing, but I know, at least just to be quite honest, to have an officer who's answering calls for service get the amount that he was able to get isn't from just falling into his lap. It's from doing a bunch of work and beating out traffic officers that are designated DUI officers in other agencies.
Yeah.
So that's just...
Yeah, it's impressive. It makes me wonder if there's any sort of way to work with the bars to push on the designated driver concept more. And I don't know but I would love to see that number go down because the number of drunk drivers is going down.
Yep.
Not because we're getting worse at enforcement. I noticed on the two errors, you categorize them both as unfounded, which means demonstrably not true versus not sustained.
Correct.
So are you finding that with body cameras and other sort of, you're now actually, it's not a he said, she said thing anymore. You can look at the camera.
100%.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. And if it's even on the line of a he said, she said, we would not sustain it,
right,
rather than unfounded.
Right.
Yep.
Great. I'm in some groups in the county where they advertise the DEA drug take-back things. I'm always a little embarrassed that Cotati's not on the list. Is there any reason not to put ourselves on the list so that people who see those, because they do put out some publicity for the DEA drug take-back days, why not list us on the day, even though we always have it there? I'm not clear why we don't participate, even though we always have the...
So we always have, and we've only not participated once, and that was in October. So we can certainly put our name back on there, and
I don't know
they
if
can
it
do
costs
the
us
bin.
anything to...
Yeah, it does. I'd have to check on that.
Yeah,
I thought there was a cost to that. It's minimal. I don't think it's that much if there is one. But no, I don't see any real reason not to be on the list. But it just in terms of yield, we get almost nothing.
I get it. We used to get a lot. I mean, I remember times when Cotati was getting more than any other city in the county. Oh, what's going on in Cotati?
Yeah.
I guess we got rid of it all.
Well, we didn't have the daily bins then too. So
Yeah,
that's fairly recent. So now that we've been pushing that out, that we have these on social media and everything, we've seen like we're changing those out quite a bit. So I think whatever that problem is still exists.
Okay, I see.
But it's a good thing that they're dropping that stuff off.
In your list of patrol, sort of what patrol officers do, it includes court appearances for cases they were involved in the arrest or whatever. I assume we have pretty clear requirements that if an officer's sort of needed in court, they go, right? I know of lots of instances where officers don't show up for court appearances and screw up arrests, and
Oh, yeah, that's a
not here,
problem.
not here. And so I'm just hoping we have very clear policies. Our officers show up for their court dates.
Very clear policies, and they're under subpoena too, so unless they want to get an order to show cause from the judge, they're going to have a problem. So yeah, we haven't had that issue come
Great.
up.
And I noticed that our farmers market isn't on your community outreach list, I think. Do you ever
We
show
can
up there?
oh yeah, no, we definitely go to that.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Good, thanks.
Just around the flock cameras, it was good to hear the successes that we've had, just in this short amount of time. And I know there's been a lot of news here recently for some other communities of allegations that this data is not as secure as what we were told when we vetted it. And I'm just wondering, do we need to do anything more to get ahead of any questions that we would get around that data, or have talking points that would be easily given to the community should those allegations, start to be made in our community?
Yeah, so there's nothing, and we had this conversation with the advisory committee as well. So because of to call it out, so there was some recent press from Mountain View PD about a couple months back in 2024. They had a particular camera that was on some setting that allowed some federal agencies, not ICE, it was like ATF and a couple of Air Force bases, to access some permissions of their data. They had that toggle turned on, right? And so Mountain View, there was a little bit of this. Mountain View blamed Flock and said, hey, we didn't know about this toggle, and it's just kind of some default. And Flock said, well, you guys knew and you should have turned it off if you didn't want it. And so there was a little bit of back and forth, and I can't answer to the specifics of that. This is based on what Mountain View, basically a press release that Mountain View put out. So anyway, I say all that to say that so now, since that incident, or even before that, but we don't even have that capability in the software. So since we just got this, that toggle doesn't even exist. So we can't even share with federal agencies, even if we wanted to. And there's laws in the state of California where a police agency in California can't share with federal agencies. So there's laws about that, right? So Flock, it's good that they grayed out that toggle, basically, is what happened. So when you look at it, when I actually physically look at it, and I checked it in the field, or on the screen, and you can't even manipulate it even if you wanted it to. So there's a number of different things like that they have updated on that. So that's when you hear Flock, what they push out is, hey, we've updated our whole mainframe here, and this is why for California agencies, and this is what it is. That's one of the main things that they've been talking about, right? So this was partially in response to what happened in Mountain View. So to the question of, hey, are you sharing your Flock data with federal agencies? Are you sharing it with ICE? The answer is no. And we only share it with California agencies, and we only share with so we have to get individual requests from those agencies to be sharing agencies, right? Some agencies just say, hey, we'll share with any agency in California. They hit the toggle and they can do that, right? We don't do that. We turn that off. So anytime an agency comes in, so if San Francisco PD says, hey, we'd like to share data with you, then I have to look and see, okay, it's San Francisco PD, okay, they're a local Bay Area agency. Yes, we're willing to share with you. That sort of thing, right? But out of state, not just federal, but if some, Baltimore PD wants to share data, we don't share with anyone outside of California. So that's the main concerns that usually come up with when it comes to ALPR data.
Okay. Thank you.
As a follow-on to that, when you say if San Francisco wanted, is it a permanent share with them or a one-time share with them?
You can do either one.
Okay.
You can make that agency request each time, or you can have it where you're willing to share data with them because they're a neighboring agency, Rohnert Park, or something like that, and you can do that. So we have that or you can even put in like a circle, like a Bay Area, within 50 miles of Bay Area agencies, you're willing to have like that kind of open, back and forth, and then anyone outside of that has to ask you each time. You can set that in various settings.
And what do we have our settings at?
We have our settings at the Bay Area that we're willing to share with Bay Area, and then other folks that want to come in, they have to individually request.
Okay. And are we sure that those agencies then are not going to share with others? I mean.
Yeah, so all but one has tried to manually do it, apparently, who's now, the AG is suing that agency right now. And so they are permanently toggled off of our, our flock, right? So, because I think they're violating the state law by doing that, right? But all the agencies who use flock in California aren't able to do it through flock. They'd have to physically, in other words, they'd have to physically pick up the phone and say, hey, you know, here's some data I'm looking at right now. They can't do it electronically via flock because that capability is turned off for California agencies, not just for Cotati.
Okay, thank you. Seth?
Can I just follow up? Were there other discussions at the Police Advisory Committee that, in response to the item we put on their agenda beyond the ALPR discussion?
Yes, so regarding the ICE and immigration conversation, so that came up, and what they, at the end of the day, what they wanted to do was table it and do their own research. So we had some brief discussion about it, but they decided they wanted to come back at the next advisory committee meeting and have a discussion about it. And so we put it on the agenda and then discuss it then. That's what they wanted to do.
Anything else? No? All right, then I will open this up for public comment. Kevin?
Yes, thank you, Vice Mayor Harvey. Once again, Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a comment on this item. The first hand is from Lori. You have the floor.
Hi, the chief forgot one detail. Dolly passed a new training in the last week or so, and so that's another update. She's now a certified man. Something happened. So anyway, I had my doubts about why Cotati needed a blood hound years ago, 3 years ago or so. But Dolly's been such a great bridge to the community. She's worth her weight in gold or whatever. I also wanted to thank Chief Simmons for the reputation of this Cotati Police is so much better under his leadership, and you can see it in the stats. That's about it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
There are no further hands on Zoom. Vice Mayor Harvey, that will end public comment.
Thank you for that, and I don't believe there's any action on this particular item, correct? Receive and discuss?
Can I just make a comment
Yeah,
too?
absolutely.
So I think I asked last year, and I would still love to see more of the data with more than just last year in this, like the NIBRS chart. It'd be easy to have several, because it's just so hard to, you know, year to year things fluctuate, and it's just so hard to see trends with just 2 years of data. So when it's possible, that would be a request I'd have. Like the calls for service, we see 4 years, which is great, but then we get a bunch of stuff that's just comparing 24 and 25. So I'd love to see that.
Yes, sir.
That's it. And otherwise, I appreciate the good work of the department and the report. Thank you for that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for the report, and thank you for all that you and your staff do. Obviously, they're doing a lot of really good work for the community, and we definitely appreciate them. So with that, we will move on. The next item is land acknowledgement and pledge of allegiance. Let's see if I can do this. Since I haven't done this before. Is this working? Okay. The City of Cotati recognizes that we're on the ancestral lands of the coastal Miwok, who are the original caretakers of this area. We respectively acknowledge the indigenous people who have been stewarding and maintaining a relationship on this land as knowledge keepers for millennia. This acknowledgement does not take the place of authentic relationships with the indigenous communities, but serves as a gesture of respect to the land we are on. So, thank you, and if you all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for that. Then we will move on to city manager's report and city council member reports. So Damien, would you like to start us out?
Sure, yeah, thank you, Vice Mayor.
You
So,
don't sound very good, but.
yeah, it's a lot of screaming down in LA,
Oh,
actually. Short. For my daughter's competition, just so everyone's clear. And maybe not has the context. All right, so our 2026 street paving project is out to bid with bid openings March 3rd. This is the slurry seal pavement preservation on the other half of East Cotati Avenue and some other miscellaneous repairs throughout the city. And then the park projects are they're inching along. The weather has slowed them down, the rainy weather. But you'll notice that there's like the light poles are up now, and they're almost there. They're inching along. It seems like every day they get a little bit closer. So, just a reminder that we have our second annual Climate Ready Cotati Fair, March 28th at the Cotati Depot. So our community development staff is leading that with a bunch of different vendors in Rohnert Park. So that's going to be shaping up to be a great event. And then March is also a busy month for recreation. We have our Camp Cotati Spring Break from March 16th to 20th, Spring Break Farm Camp, March 16th to 19th, Open Ranch Days, March 13th, 3 to 5:30, and the Cotati Community Yard Sales, March 21st, Bunny Brunch on March 28th, and then we're continuing free compost weekends at the Ronda Fletty Ranch, and newly added Intro to Garden Critters Workshop, March 14th. That's it. Thank you.
Wow, short report. Any questions on this?
I'm just wondering if either you or Craig can, there's a bike lane that's been closed on East Cotati for months now and in front of the cottage housing, and can we get that open again? I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, the contractor had a challenge with their, getting their fire design, fire sprinkler connection to align with what was constructed in the field. Substantial delays. Unfortunately, it was, like I mentioned, a difference between the designer and the person actually doing the work. That seems to have been resolved now. We talked to the fire department today. We share the exact same concerns. And I do plan to reach out to the contractor and the developer to get that resolved so the bike lane and the sidewalk both can get opened as soon as possible.
Thanks.
Okay, council member reports.
Once again, none of my committees met in the last 2 weeks.
I had the Library Advisory Board at the Rohnert Park Cotati Library, and they will be closing the Liberal Library for renovations in mid-September through the 1st of January. They're looking for some locations to have some of their continuing programs, like the Story Hour and things like that. So as we get a little more information on what they're needing, I don't know if we might have some space here or the train station that maybe they could use for those 3 months on some type of regularity. But I'll bring that information to us. The second meeting was the Legislative Committee meeting for Sonoma County, and the current chair, Jill McLewis, Sebastopol's mayor, will continue on as chair for the new year, and Jack Ding from Sonoma will be the vice chair. And right now, the bills are still kind of in a 3 or 4 day wait until the full list comes out. It might be out today or tomorrow. And the next meeting will have a lot of update on bills. There are 3 bills that the California League of Cities is going to be sponsoring specifically, and we'll get more information on that.
Great. Yes.
I remember 2 things I should report on. So
There you go.
Sorry. In preparation for this Thursday's Russian River Watershed Association board meeting, Craig and I met with the RWA staff to go over next year's work plan and Cotati's, the pieces of it that Cotati's participating in. I thought it was a good meeting. And the Measure O Oversight Committee, I'm not a city representative, I whatever it is, the Mayors and Council Members Association appointed me to that, but that met last week, and the basic news is that with all of the federal cuts, health services is in rough shape going forward, and so Measure O is kind of, we're lucky to have Measure O in this county as a backstop that, we might have the most robust mental health services around because we're the only ones who have a local source of funding. But it means that many of the things that Measure O was hoping to fund are being pulled back because some of the core stuff is going to have to be funded out of Measure O, as the feds cut a lot of funding. So.
Interesting. I have a couple of things. I attended the Marin-Sonoma Mosquito and Vector Control District meeting, and was not a very long meeting, but we did work on some committee assignments, and then those that had attended the annual conference did reports on the new things that were brought forward at those conference meetings. And I also attended the Waste Management Agency meeting, and we put through some short-term agreements for some of the organics. And we worked on the draft budget. Key there is that because of having to ship more of the organics out elsewhere and pay more fees in order to accommodate all that, the tipping fee will be being raised $13 a ton, which from a residential impact, it'll be, depending upon what city and what agreement and all that, somewhere between 65 to 97 cents a month will be the impact to residents. But we have to get that taken care of. And then I attended the mayor and council members meeting, and we had 3 presentations, one from the Sonoma Ecology Center, and then one was What We Wish People Knew in Insurance 101, and then the Sonoma County Department of Emergency Management did a presentation. And I don't have the outcome from the Board of Directors meeting, but maybe Sylvia can give that next time, because I wasn't at that part. On Friday, I attended for the mayor meeting that Damon Connolly held over at the Roanoke Park Library. It was a meet and greet, a coffee, and there was probably about 35 people there. Was a pretty good turnout, and he basically answered people's questions on different things. And you know, as you pointed out about bills, the bills were still kind of bubbling kind of at that point. He actually had driven down from Sacramento to be at this meet and greet, but it was a really good session. And that's all I have. Yeah.
On the organics, do you have a sense of what the timeline is for getting ours built? Is it 10 years?
So I asked that question the last time. So they're working with the county, and the county is looking at the solution out there by the airport. But to do all the environmental work and everything that has to be done to get through that, what I was told was at a minimum, I mean, if that was, everything just went smooth, it would be a minimum of 3 years, but we're probably looking at more like 5 years for that to happen, which is not great, but
yeah.
I don't know what we're going to do, but yeah.
And can I add one comment about the Mayors and Council Members Association?
Yeah.
We hosted it here, and I just want to commend Kevin and Ashley and all the staff who put it on, because it was a great event, and the floor in there looks good.
The floor looks really good, and the food was excellent. Yes. And it was a very nice turnout, too. We had quite a lot of folks come, which was really nice. So that is all I have. And we will move on to information received after the agenda was posted.
Yes, there was a public comment received. Everything that was received was uploaded to the HTML agenda. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Then I will call this meeting adjourned at 8:22. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Great job, just like riding a bike.